all from a single location on the suit. And again, if you're just now joining us, we are live watching Crew 4 return home to planet Earth from the International Space Station. We've had the deorbit burn, we've jettisoned the trunk for the vehicle, and the nose cone has closed on Dragon Freedom. And again, another live view inside of the capsule there.
And SpaceX from Freedom, tablets are secure, restraints are tightened, and our visors are down. We are ready for entry.
SpaceX copies for tablets, restraints, and visors. Please confirm that tablets are stowed with the loops as provided on the satchels.
Copy, welcome.
So we are now less than 20 minutes away from splashdown, and again we are going to be entering that blackout communication period. But once we are on the other side of that, things will happen pretty quickly. The drogue chutes will deploy.
And SpaceX Freedom tablets are all secure.
SpaceX copies. Thank you, Freedom. And at this time, we're just over 5 minutes from predicted comm blackout. We will see you on the other side at 2049.
Okay, cop from LOS, and we'll see you on the flip side at 2049.
And so you did hear those words from the ground up to Crew 4, namely Kjell Lindgren, just ensuring that the tablets are stowed and secured in the proper positioning ahead of the communications blackout expected now less than 5 minutes from now, and really in anticipation of re-entry and then splashdown. As we were saying, the pace is really going to pick up once we are through that communications blackout. The drogue parachutes will deploy, and then the main parachutes will deploy, and then we will see the crew splash down. After that, we'll see the fast boats head out to the crew, inspect it, make sure everything is looking good and the integrity of the vehicle is as it should be, and those main parachutes will also be cut. And then the recovery personnel will work on securing the vehicle and bringing it into the recovery vessel. And then after some private medical checks with the crew, we should see the crew egress a short time after that. So again, we are expecting the splashdown to occur at 1:55 Pacific time, so just a few minutes from now, and we are coming up on that communications blackout that is as expected as well.
Yeah, and this blackout period is basically when the vehicle is entering back into the Earth's atmosphere. It is heating up and plasma is building around the capsule, which prevents communications with here in mission control. Lasts about 6 minutes. It is nominal, and once we get through that blackout period, we do make sure that the crew can communicate with the ground here in mission control.
And we do have the NASA plane, the WB-57, which is up in the air, and it's equipped with some imaging technology that will be able to get pretty much the first views of the Dragon capsule on its return back to Earth. So we are getting some of that footage right now. We are anticipating that communications blackout and loss of signal here shortly. This is really the beginning of that period where the crew themselves will be re-entering the Earth's atmosphere. And at this time, the Dragon is working through a slewing maneuver, which means that the Dragon is helping to orient itself in the proper orientation ahead of the reentry of the Earth's atmosphere. Again, we're just a couple of minutes away from that anticipated blackout period.
We are just about a minute away from that communications blackout period. Again, it should last only about 6 minutes long. And this is what happens when the vehicle begins to heat up as it's entering back into the Earth's atmosphere and builds up a layer of plasma around the vehicle. Again, this is nominal, and we will establish communications once the vehicle is through that period.
So we are hearing that the Dragon is beginning to hit the Earth's atmosphere here, really at the upper limits of the atmosphere. So that's going to help to slow the vehicle down quite a bit, but we are now seconds away from the anticipated loss of signal. Standing by for confirmation that we are in the communications blackout. And as we await that confirmation, you can see the crowd is starting to grow here in Hawthorne behind the Mission Control Center here. Looks like folks are trying to get a good view as we anticipate splashdown here in a little less than 15 minutes.
Yeah, we do get pretty excited when we are bringing crew back home. It is pretty exciting to watch them as they touch back down on planet Earth. They've been out in space for about 6 months now. Again, we are currently in the comms blackout period. This is nominal, lasts about 6 minutes. We are just a few minutes away from passing through this blackout period. Now, at this point, we are entering a communications blackout period, which lasts approximately 6 minutes due to plasma formation around the spacecraft. Now, during this time, no vehicle telemetry is received by Mission Control or the recovery team, and no external commanding of the vehicle or voice communication is possible. Now, as a reminder, Dragon is designed to fly itself, so during re-entry, the vehicle will be slowing down from orbital velocity, which is approximately 17,500 miles per hour. Now, the top temperature Dragon will experience upon re-entry is about 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit. And again, the blackout period is expected to last about 6, maybe up to 7 minutes long.
And we are just about 4 minutes remaining in this anticipated communications blackout period. And during this reentry phase, the crew rather, is going to be experiencing a deceleration, and the team here on the ground is going to continue to monitor that, make sure that everything is proceeding as expected. But once we're on the other side of this communications blackout, that's when we'll begin to see the parachutes deploy, beginning with the drogue parachutes and then following with the main parachutes, and then we'll see splashdown and then the recovery process to get the crew onto the recovery vessel, and then out of the capsule will begin.
And we did mention the high temperatures that the vehicle is seeing during this blackout period. So there is nitrox flowing through the suits that the astronauts are in, and that helps keep them cool while the vehicle is getting very hot on the outside.
So we are getting our very first views there from the WB-57 of the capsule as it re-enters the Earth's atmosphere. Those views coming from an infrared camera that is on board. So the team will continue to track Dragon as it re-enters the Earth's atmosphere. We now have about 3 minutes remaining in the blackout period, but again, the WB-57 that is deployed is getting those views of Dragon already.
Once the expected blackout period is over, the Corps here in Mission Control will attempt to establish communications with the crew. So you may hear some call-outs checking in with the crew. And they will make that call out until the crew does respond, which will confirm acquisition of signal.
We have about 2 minutes remaining in the anticipated period of communications blackout. Now, it's not an exact science. There might be some variation that occurs. We might hear from the crew a little earlier than we expected, or potentially a little bit later. But we are all on the edge of our seats, eagerly awaiting to hear from the crew. So far, everything looking good.
Dragon, SpaceX comm check.
Continuing to get those views from the WB-57 of Crew Dragon as it continues to make its way closer and closer to splashdown.
Freedom, SpaceX comm check.
And SpaceX, Freedom has you loud and clear, coming through 30 kilometers altitude.
Copy and concur. Expect automated chute deployment.
Freedom copies. We'll be monitoring.
And HEPS is converge. Expect nominal chute deployment altitude.
Freedom copies. Looking for nominal chute deploy.
Well, Jesse, it is absolutely phenomenal to hear from the crew on the other side of that communications blackout period. We are continuing to get these great views from the WB-57 high altitude aircraft, providing that thermal imagery. We did even see the tail of entry of the vehicle, and it's just absolutely beautiful to see that. So we also heard we did hear a call up to the crew that they are expecting the automated Drogue deployment, so we're just standing by for confirmation that Dragon's chutes have deployed.
Again, there will be a set.
Freedom SpaceX, brace for Drogue window.
Bracing for drogues.
Core here communicating with the crew, giving them a heads up that they should feel the drogue chutes deploying here shortly, followed by the main chutes just about a minute later. The drogue chutes do help to slow the vehicle down to about 350 miles per hour, whereas the main chutes will deploy, after the main chutes deploy, it will slow the vehicle down even more, and by the time that the vehicle splashes down, should be around 16 miles per hour. And there's those drogue chutes, and you can hear the crowd here very excited to see them deploy.
Drogue chute descent rate nominal and visual on 2 healthy drogues.
Freedom copies.
Very cool view of Dragon with the 2 drogue chutes. We are just anticipating the main chutes to deploy here shortly.
Main chute descent rate nominal, visual on 4 healthy mains.
And freedom copies. 4 healthy mains.
And great news, as you can see there, the main chutes have deployed, slowing the Dragon vehicle down significantly, down to approximately 119 miles per hour.
Freedom is 1,000 meters.
Copy 1,000.
Now, Dragon has saved all propulsion systems and is now terminating the Nitrox suit and cabin purges, and is beginning to increase.
Freedom's at 800 meters.
Copy 800.
Dragon is beginning to increase pressure in preparation for landing. And the mission control team here in Hawthorne is reporting the precise landing coordinates to the recovery team.
So we did get that confirmation on the main
600 meters.
chutes.
600.
The crew is now 600 meters away from splashing down. We do expect splashdown in about 2 minutes from now.
Landing in water is simpler, therefore more reliable, and it provides more margin against unlikely parachute.
Freedom 400 meters.
Copy 4.
provides more margin against unlikely parachute issues. We had to learn how to make Dragon waterproof. But once you do, it is a rinse, review, and reuse type of process. And we are just about a minute away from splashdown of the Dragon vehicle back onto planet Earth, and hearing good callouts of the altitude of Dragon.
Freedom's at 200 meters. We're bracing for splashdown.
Copy, brace for splashdown.
And again, that descent rate is as expected here. Pretty soon we should be able to see the view of the ocean come into view as Crew Dragon Freedom with 4 astronauts on board prepares to splash down after spending 170 days in space after launching on April 27th.
Incredible view as the crowd goes wild for Crew 4.
Copy, Freedom, SpaceX to splashdown and mains cut.
Welcome
Copy. Mains are
home.
cut.
Welcome home, Crew 4. Great view watching Dragon splash down back on planet Earth. Now, as you can see on your screen, we have visual confirmation for splashdown of the Dragon spacecraft. Dragon Freedom has returned home, and NASA astronauts Chell, Bob, Jessica, and
SpaceX Freedom, we are water uprighting and stable 1.
Copy, Freedom. We see stable 1. You are go for 4.800. And on behalf of SpaceX, welcome home. Thanks for flying SpaceX.
And SpaceX from Freedom, thank you for an incredible ride up to orbit and an incredible ride home. Glad to be back.
As you can see, Dragon Freedom has returned home, and NASA astronauts Chell, Bob, and Jessica and ESA astronaut Samantha are back on Earth after an approximately 5-hour return journey from space. The SpaceX recovery ship and team has been waiting for Dragon splashdown, and they will now make their way to the splashdown location.
And we did hear the call out that the vehicle is in stable 1. That's the configuration that we were hoping for. Stable 1 means it's in the ocean upright as expected, and you can see that exactly on your screen here. So the teams have been ready and waiting about 3 nautical miles away. So it's going to take them about 30 minutes or so to make their way to Chell, Bob, Jessica, and Samantha inside. But about a minute and 30 seconds after the landing, Mission Control Hawthorne will give the go for final approach and the safe approach. And then about 2 minutes after landing, the approach boat will begin those inspections that we discussed earlier. That's just to ensure that everything is as expected with the vehicle.
Dragon, complete with waiting for.
SpaceX copies Dragon for awareness. Comm is a little bit choppy, but we copy that you are complete with 4.800 and awaiting recovery personnel. I will provide an update on recovery forces in a couple minutes. How copy?
Standing by.
And Mission Control here in Hawthorne did give the go for that approach and recovery. And so here shortly, we should be able to get some views of the fast boats as they approach the Dragon Freedom with the crew still on board.
Freedom, SpaceX is go for recovery personnel to approach. Expect personnel alongside within the next couple minutes.
Okay, copy. We're just seeing some friendly faces.
And there you are getting a view of those fast boats as they approach the vehicle. They will essentially be doing some safety checks, making sure that all the ordnances and hypergalls are not present or in the area immediately around the vehicle. And they'll also perform an inspection of the capsule itself to make sure that integrity-wise it is looking good. You are seeing that very first fast boat approach the vehicle there. And they really want to do these inspections to make sure that everything is looking good before they do hoist it up into the recovery vessel. So it will take a little bit of time before we do see the crew egress or exit the capsule. We're shooting for less than an hour to bring the Dragon onto the recovery ship and open the hatch to egress. Once these checkouts are complete, you'll see a member of the recovery team actually climb on board the capsule.
Freedom, SpaceX for camera configuration.
And SpaceX.
We are looking for permission to come on board via the display camera view only.
Okay, you're welcome aboard.
And Freedom, we are back on board with the display cam. Recovery personnel are alongside.
Okay, copy all. Thank you.
And getting some waves from the crew on board Freedom post splashdown. Looks like they're doing pretty well. First time feeling gravity in 170 days.
It looks like they're waving to the world, technically. The crew will remain in their seats all the way until they are brought on board the recovery vessel.
Now, we do expect to hear some words from NASA's Brandy Dean, who is actually on the recovery ship and was able to witness the reentry and splashdown of Crew Dragon Freedom. Brandy, if you're able to hear us, can you tell us a little bit about what it was like to witness 4 humans return to Earth after their mission aboard the International Space Station?
Hey Sandra, it is a gorgeous day for a Splashdown. I'm hoping they're a little rougher than they've been in the past, but it's still it's a beautiful day. Watching the capsule down, the parachutes were just glowing in the sun behind them. It was gorgeous. And so we are now underway and making our way towards the team here on the boat was so excited. There were cheers. We heard the double room as it transferred and got to see the drogue shoot and then finally make its way down. So it's been a really great day so far. We're looking forward to seeing the crew here on board the ship.
That's wonderful to hear, Brandy. Can you tell us a little bit about what the crew is doing and is done to prepare for this moment from your perspective as you've been on the recovery vessel?
I don't know if I lost you or not. I haven't heard any questions yet, in other words.
We've got you, Brandy. Here, I'll repeat it.
Freedom, SpaceX, hypergol sweeps, and unfired ordnance checks nominal. The rigging is in progress. Approximately 5 minutes until capsule lift. Stand by for PMC with SpaceX flight surgeon.
Okay, Freedom copies all. Hypergol checks are passed, and we're about 25 minutes out. We're standing by for the PMC.
So, Brandy, if you're still with us, we did just hear that all of those hypergol checks went as expected, and we can see that the rigging has begun. I'm sure you have a much better view of it yourself on the boat, but can you tell us a little bit more about what the crew on the boat is doing to get ready for the next steps to bring the capsule onto the boat? And it sounds like we may have lost Brandy. They are out at sea, so communications can be a bit spotty. We might be able to join back with her a bit later, but you are seeing right now someone on the capsule. They are doing what is called rigging. You see that they're tossing some different equipment up to them, and that's to ensure that the vehicle is ready.
Freedom, SpaceX, I will be privatizing Dragon to ground now. The next call you hear will be from the SpaceX flight surgeon on the recovery vessel.
Freedom copies.
And so those call outs about a private medical conference, just to ensure that the crew is all feeling healthy, and if there's anything that they may need medically wise once they do get on the boat. That is, of course, privatized for medical and personal reasons, but we are continuing to get really great views here of the rigging process. As I was saying, this individual is working to secure Dragon and enable it to be lifted onto the recovery vessel here in just a short time from now. And so once this process is complete, the next steps will be to hoist up Dragon and place it onto the boat, onto the platform. And then that platform itself will be moved so that the crew can egress a short time after that. Then once the crew is on the boat and back inside of the capsule, they will board helicopters that are on the boat to bring them back to Ellington Field, which is near the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. And then they will bring European Space Agency astronaut Samantha Cristoforetti back to Europe.
Freedom, SpaceX, PMC complete, and Dragon to ground is no longer privatized.
Okay, Freedom copies. Thank you.
And it sounds like we do have Brandy back with us. So Brandy, if you can hear us, can you tell us a little bit about what the crew on the vessel is doing to prepare for the capsule to be placed onto the boat? We did see the rigging that was taking place, but I'm sure you have a much better view from your perspective.
Yeah, the view is pretty great from here. We can see the boat getting the rigs ready, as you said. It sounds like you guys already heard kind of a good check from the crew, and sounds like everyone is doing well on board. I don't know how much you were able to hear earlier. It was a beautiful, gorgeous touchdown with the sun shining behind the parachute. So everyone here is really excited to be getting the crew back on board here in the next few minutes. The ship left around the time of undocking today, and then the NASA and ESA team joined up by Hopper a few hours later. So since then, it's been getting the medical room ready. It's still down, and it's going to be really comfortable for the crew. It's been just a little time there, just as long as it takes for the crew to feel kind of worked up to making the helicopter ride back to dry land. They will do a few medical tests first. They'll give them an IV to get fluid that they lost, while they were in space back into their bodies, help them readjust to gravity a little better. Just do regular medical checkouts, and that sort of thing. And then when they get back to Jacksonville, that's when the fun really starts with the scientific tests that are things, a number of things, but including tests that will kind of talk a little bit more about what to expect when we are sending crews to the moon and Mars. They'll do things like having them step up stairs and see how they're able to handle that, having been in space for several months, and get on the ground looking like they've fallen and try to get back up. Things like that will really help us be sure that we're ready when we're sending crews to different dry land in the future. And then from there, they'll get on planes, go back to Houston. They will spend at least a night, or the Americans will spend at least a night in crew quarters at Johnson Space Center to make sure they're doing well before they jump right into their recovery period of medical tests, scientific tests, and a lot of exercise to get them reconditioned and used to life back in gravity again. Meanwhile, Samantha will be going back to Europe. She'll leave pretty much right away once they get back to Houston.
Thank you so much, Brandy, for that insight and sharing your firsthand experience of what it was like to witness splashdown from the recovery vessel. We really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us, but we'll let you get back to it and enjoy your time out there.
Thanks, guys.
And as recovery procedures continue as expected, we did have a splashdown that occurred at 1:55 p.m. Pacific time this afternoon, and you do see a wonderful photo on the left hand of your screen of that splashdown with the main parachutes all deployed. Really the moment that Crew Dragon Freedom touched Earth again for the first time in 170 days. So we do see the recovery vessel continue to approach the Crew Dragon Freedom vehicle.
You are seeing on your screen a live view inside of the Dragon capsule with our crew patiently waiting in their seats. They will remain harnessed into their seats until the hatch is actually opened on the Dragon vehicle.
And we did see the rigging process that was taking place a short time ago, and now we're getting another view of it here. That person on the capsule is called the rigger, and they are working to secure Dragon to rigging hardware to safely lift it up and out of the water. And that will be done using that A-frame, which is the boxy frame that you see towards the back of the boat there.
We are getting some pretty great views with this being in the daytime. We have Splashdown in the nighttime where it's a little bit harder to see, but today we've got some light and get to watch the process pretty clearly here.
Looks like a really beautiful day out there in Jacksonville. Now, I am hoping that we will have the chance to see the rigger jump off of the vehicle. That's always one of my favorite parts.
We are now excitedly awaiting the recovery of our Dragon spacecraft with NASA astronauts Chell, Bob, Jessica, and ESA astronaut Samantha inside. Dragon has already autonomously completed several steps to safe itself following splashdown. Now, for those of you just joining us, the mission has gone smoothly so far. Dragon successfully splashed down in the Atlantic Ocean off the coast of Jacksonville, Florida at 1:55 p.m. Pacific time.
Approximately 5 hours before splashdown, Dragon autonomously undocked from the International Space Station and completed a series of departure burns. The trunk was then jettisoned, and the final burn, the deorbit burn, was completed to place Dragon on a trajectory toward Jacksonville, Florida. Dragon successfully re-entered the Earth's atmosphere, followed by deployment of its parachutes to slow the spacecraft down to a gentle splashdown. And we saw that moments ago, just a few minutes ago, rather, and we had really gorgeous views of it. So we're now following the final part of Chell, Bob, Jessica, and Samantha's journey as Dragon is going to be lifted out of the water and placed on the recovery boat.
Upon detection of landing, Dragon autonomously releases the main chutes to prevent wind from pulling the spacecraft. Dragon then automatically safes any pyrotechnics still present on the vehicle and may automatically perform additional minor system reconfigurations. The astronauts remain seated and in their seats and in their suits as well at this point, but the onboard air conditioning keeps temperatures in check inside of the spacecraft, and the communication systems on board remain powered so that the crew can continue to communicate.
And we did see that motion of the A-frame as it was getting ready to lift the capsule up and out of the water. Now, SpaceX does have 2 fast boats in the recovery fleet, which have moved to the splashdown point already. They were followed by the main recovery vessel, which is really getting ready to lift the vehicle now at this point. So those 2 fast boats do have a very specific role. The first approach is focused on immediate safety inspection of the capsule integrity and checking for any presence of hypergolic propellant vapors, ensuring that it is safe for the recovery vessel to approach the Dragon spacecraft. All of those checks performed well, and once the spacecraft is cleared for full approach, the team begins rigging the capsule for water recovery by the recovery ship. That process is underway and just wrapped up. And then the second boat is really responsible for parachute recovery and serves as a redundant boat to the first. We'll also see a team member on a jet ski helping to gather up the now detached parachutes, and it looks like they may have already completed that process. I'm not seeing them. They might be just off the screen.
Now, it took a little over 10 minutes for the recovery crew to complete their safety checks, and once they did complete that, the
Freedom, SpaceX contract.
SpaceX Freedom has you on clear.
Rigging is complete. Please brace for capsule lift.
Copy that. Bracing for capsule lift.
Great news. All preparations for rigging have been completed with that confirmation of the comms there. So we should see Dragon start to lift out of the water here in just a few seconds.
And the recovery teams are now preparing to lower the vessel's hydraulic lift mechanism into the water to bring the spacecraft into the on-deck translation system known as the deck. Dragon will remain known as the nest, and Dragon will remain in this nest during the crew extraction and then for the journey back into port. So here momentarily we will see the capsule being lifted and set on the nest. It will then be centered and oriented and then translated into the hangar underneath the helipad aboard the ship so that we can open up the hatch. And once open, a SpaceX medical doctor will be the first one to check in on Chell, Bob, Jessica, and Samantha and see if they are ready for egress or getting out. And you see that motion underway now as Dragon is lifted into the nest.
This is a very cool view and cool process as we lift the Dragon vehicle, and you can see the nest there that it's going to be sat down into. While Dragon's top hatch is used to connect to the space station, the astronauts will egress from the Dragon's side hatch, pending capsule orientation in the water. Now, before opening the hatch, the spacecraft's cabin pressure must be equalized with the outside environment. Once the hatch is opened, that will be the crew's first breath of fresh air since boarding Dragon at the start of their mission back in April.
So it is important to note that Chell, Bob, Jessica, and Samantha will be getting some assistance from the recovery team while they are exiting the capsule. This is the same process for any returning long-duration crew members, as returning to a gravity environment can wreak havoc with our vestibular system responsible for maintaining balance and motion. And of course, safety is always our #1 priority. So you'll see Chell, Bob, Jessica, and Samantha helped out of the capsule and assisted the few feet to the medical quarters aboard the boat. And if you've ever watched crews return on a Soyuz mission, this is the same process as when astronauts are carried from the capsule to waiting chairs and then carried to a waiting medical tent. So it looks like we are getting views now of Dragon in the nest, successfully lifted up out of the water. And so once the crew egresses the capsule, this is a period where any time-critical cargo can also be recovered from the spacecraft, with the remainder waiting.
Freedom, SpaceX, welcome aboard the recovery vessel. Recovery personnel are going to be completing final checks and stand by for translation to the egress platform.
Freedom copies.
Great news there as Dragon sits in the nest there, and you did hear some comms. What they're going to do is, once they de-rig this, they will slide the Dragon vehicle to a platform where the astronauts can easily exit that side hatch there.
And for those of you that might be just joining us, we did have Crew 4 successfully undock from the International Space Station just about 5 hours ago, and they splashed down at 1:55 p.m. Pacific time. All went as expected through the deorbit burn, and the parachutes deployed as expected. The capsule is now lifted onto the boat, and we are standing by for the translation to occur. And once that translation moves the Dragon capsule up underneath the helicopter pad, the recovery team will then be able to work on opening up the hatch and removing the crew from the capsule. Crew 4 did splash down just about 30 minutes ago and is now already on the recovery vessel. The recovery vessel being used today is named Megan, after Crew 2 astronaut Megan MacArthur. So we are standing by for that translation maneuver to occur.
You can see on the recovery vessel the platform that they will translate the Dragon vehicle to. If you saw the view earlier, the hatch is slightly above ground level, so that platform will allow the crew to exit the vehicle. Again, if you are just now joining us, the Crew 4 crew is now back on planet Earth. They are still inside of their seats and suits inside of that Dragon capsule that you see there on your screen.
And so after this translation maneuver occurs, the next steps will be for the folks on the recovery vessel that are specialized in opening up that side hatch that will begin that process. Now, we have mentioned that we do have medical doctors on board that will help take care of the crew after the hatch opening and will conduct a series of initial checks before they are flown by helicopter back to shore. The recovery vessel, as you can imagine, takes quite a bit of time to get out into the splashdown zone, so the crew is flown off of the vehicle on helicopters and then take aircraft and fly back home to Houston for our 3 NASA astronauts on board, and then for our ESA astronaut on board, Samantha Cristoforetti, she'll head back to Europe.
And the crew has been out in space on the International Space Station for about 6 months. They do get to work out while they're out on the space station, working out in microgravity. But that is why the medical team is there, to make sure that they are safe and healthy, make sure that they are able to adjust to gravity. It's probably a pretty big adjustment being gone from gravity for such a long period of time. So the medical team will be there to make sure that they can exit the vehicle safely, and then we'll do some private medical checks with each of the individuals. And I'm loving these views here of the recovery vessel. We don't often get to see this because sometimes it is nighttime, depending on when undocking and splashdown does happen for the crew members. So this is a pretty nice treat to get to see this great view. And you can see the helicopter pad on top of the recovery vessel there that Sandra was mentioning. There will be a helicopter that comes and lands there shortly once the crew is or has egressed the Dragon vehicle and is ready to fly back to land, and then take another flight on a plane to Houston, with Samantha taking a flight back to Europe.
And it looks like we are seeing that translation maneuver underway.
And coming up next, once this translation maneuver is complete, the crew on board will begin to open up that side hatch.
And as you can see from this view inside Crew Dragon Freedom, it looks like the crew does have their visors. It's kind of hard to tell from this angle if they're up or down, but when they egress from the capsule, we do expect those visors to be up. It'll be their first breath of fresh air in 170 days since they launched back in April. And we were seeing some views of the personnel on the recovery vessel who are specialized in opening up that hatch begin to get everything ready to begin that process. So we do expect hatch opening to come just a short time from now. And once that hatch is open, we'll see the footrest actually be removed before the crew egresses, and that's really just to help make egressing a little bit easier. And now a great view on the left of the crew that's still inside Freedom, but not for long. And on the right-hand side is the recovery vessel. You can see the Crew Dragon Freedom tucked underneath the helicopter pad there after that